My ex left me for a rich lawyer, saying I was too small. 7 years later, she saw me in a Ferrari and suddenly remembered my number. 7 years ago, I was nothing. At least, that's what Sarah made me feel like when she walked out of my life. We met in college. I was an ambitious but broke computer science student, dreaming of building something big. She was an economics major, smart, beautiful, and effortlessly confident. We clicked instantly. I fell for her hard, and for a while, I believed she felt the same way. Our first few years together were great. We were young, reckless, and full of dreams. But the thing about dreams is that they don't pay the bills. Not immediately, at least. And Sarah? She was patient at first, but that patience had an expiration date. I should have seen the signs. The way she'd sigh when we'd split a meal at a cheap restaurant. The way she hesitated before agreeing to another night in my tiny, one-bedroom apartment, where the only luxury was a second-hand couch I found on Craigslist. One night, I came home late from the startup incubator I was working at. I was exhausted, but excited. I had just completed a prototype for an app one was sure would take off. I wanted to celebrate with Sarah. I walked in, expecting her warm embrace. Instead, I found her sitting on my bed, hands clenched in her lap, avoiding my eyes. "I think we need to talk," she said, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. A pit formed in my stomach. I knew where this was going, but I let her speak anyway. "I can't do this anymore," she continued, taking a deep breath. "I need stability, real stability. And I just don't see that with you." It hit me like a freight train. "What are you saying?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm saying I've met someone else." She finally looked at me, and there was something cold in her eyes. A certainty. A finality. "A lawyer," she added, almost like an afterthought. "He has his life together. He's successful, mature, and he can give me the kind of future I want." I was speechless. 3 years. 3 years together. And she was throwing it all away because I wasn't it yet? "But I'm working on it," I said, my voice cracking. "Sarah, you know I have plans. Plans don't pay the rent," she cut me off. "Dreams don't buy a house." She stood up, brushing invisible dust off her dress. "I've already packed my things." I watched in silence as she picked up her last bag, walked to the door, and without another word, left. Just like that, she was gone. And I was alone. For weeks, I couldn't function. I barely ate. I barely slept. I couldn't work. The pain sat in my chest like a rock, suffocating me. I tried not to check her social media, but curiosity got the best of me. It took less than a month for her to start posting pictures with him. The lawyer, expensive dates, weekend getaways, fancy brunches, everything she had ever wanted, now was someone else. I wanted to hate her. But more than that, I hated myself for not being enough, for not being successful enough, stable enough, worthy enough. That was my lowest point. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It gives you a solid foundation to rebuild. And that's exactly what I did. I cut off distractions. No more scrolling through social media. No more useless time wasted feeling sorry for myself. I doubled down on my startup. I worked insane hours, learning every single thing I could about the business world. I read books, attended networking events, found mentors. I took risks I never would before. And slowly, the pieces started to come together. The first breakthrough came when a local investor took interest in my app. He saw the potential I had been screaming about for years. He gave me my first real funding, and suddenly, everything changed. I moved into a slightly better apartment, nothing fancy, just enough to stop feeling like a failure. My company grew, and so did my confidence. I hit the gym religiously, channeling my frustration and heartbreak into something productive. 3 years in, we landed a massive deal with a major tech company. My team grew from 3 broke guys in a co-working space to a full-scale business with real revenue. Investors poured in and my valuation skyrocketed. By the time 7 years had passed, I wasn't just successful, I was wealthy. I sold my company for $12 million. And that's when fate decided to play its little game. One afternoon, I was driving through the city in my Ferrari 488 Spider, a car I had dreamed of since I was a kid. It wasn't about showing off. It was about proving to myself that I had made it. Then, at a red light, I saw her, Sarah. She was walking with a friend, but she looked different, a little older, a little worn out, not the same confident girl who once left me for someone better. Our eyes met. First, she looked confused, then shocked, then recognition. My phone buzzed a few moments later. It was a text from Sarah. "Hey, long time no see. Wow, I just realized we haven't talked in years. How have you been?" I stared at the screen for a second. Then I smiled and left her on read. Then I hit the gas and never looked back. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt closure. After all, wasn't this what I had dreamed of? Becoming so successful that I would never have to think about her again, proving that I was more than just a dreamer, that I was worth something, that I could be more than she ever believed. And yet, as I stare at my phone, her message burning into my retinas, something inside me snapped. "Hey, long time no see. Wow, I just realized we haven't talked in years. How have you been?" I could have ignored it. I could have blocked her and moved on, but I didn't, because something dark stirred within me. It wasn't longing. It wasn't heartbreak. It was rage. All those sleepless nights, grinding away at my business while she was sipping champagne on weekend getaways. All those moments when I had doubted myself, questioning whether she had been right to leave. All the times I had swallowed my pride while she flaunted her new life. No, she wasn't getting off that easy. I took a deep breath and typed a response. Hey, Sarah. Wow, it has been a long time. I'm doing really well. How about you? I knew exactly what I was doing. I want to play this out. Her reply came within minutes. I'm good. Just, life's been a little crazy. We should catch up sometime. It'd be great to see you. I smirked. There it was. The hook. She wanted back in. I had no idea what her life had turned into, but I was about to find out. And I wasn't going to stop until I saw the look in her eyes when she realized just how much she had lost. We arranged to meet at an upscale rooftop bar in the city. I arrived first, dressed sharp but not too flashy. Just enough to make an impression. I sat by the bar, casually sipping my whiskey when I saw her walk in. She was still beautiful, but there were cracks in the perfect image she once projected. Slight stress lines around her eyes. A hesitancy in her movements. She wasn't the same carefree girl who had walked out of my life years ago. She spotted me, and for a moment, something flickered in her expression. Nervousness. I stood up and smiled. Sarah, wow, it's been forever. She laughed, tucking her hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I remembered well. Yeah, you look amazing. Life's clearly been treating you well. I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral. I can't complain. So tell me, what's new with you? Her smile faltered, and that's when I knew. Something had happened. Something she wasn't proud of. She hesitated, then took a sip of her drink before answering. Well, things don't always work out the way we expect. Bingo. I leaned in slightly. You're not still with him, are you? The lawyer? She exhaled sharply. No. We got divorced last year. I feigned surprise. Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. It's okay. She stirred her drink absent-mindedly. Well, let's just say money doesn't make a person kind. He cheated. A lot. And when the divorce happened, I didn't exactly walk away with much. Oh, this was too perfect. I kept my expression neutral. That's awful. You deserve better. Her eyes met mine. Yeah, maybe I just made the wrong choice back then. She said it softly, almost like a confession. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, letting the words sink in. Then she reached out and touched my hand. I've really missed you. I stared at her fingers resting on mine, and for a brief moment, I thought about the past, about the love I had once felt for her, about how much I had wanted to be enough. But that was the old me, and the old me was dead. I pulled my hand back gently. Sarah, I think we should take things slow. Her eyes lit up. Of course. I'd love that. Hook, line, and sinker. This wasn't about getting her back. This was about revenge. And I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of regret she had ever buried deep inside. Sarah thought she had won. 7 years ago, she left me in the dust, chasing after a man with money, status, and an established life. She thought I was nothing, a dreamer without a future. But life has a way of coming full circle. And now I held all the cards. I played my part perfectly. Over the next few weeks, I let Sarah believe I was slowly warming up to her again. I sent just the right amount of mixed signals, just enough to keep her hooked, but not enough to make her feel secure. I took her to expensive restaurants, dressed in tailored suits, let her experience the luxury that she once craved. I made sure she saw the way people respected me, the way business owners shook my hand, the way women threw lingering glances in my direction. I watched as her hunger for my life grew. She began texting me first, sending long, nostalgic messages about how she regretted leaving me, how she had been young and foolish, how she had never stopped thinking about me. I replied in short, vague messages. She started chasing me. She wanted me back, desperately, and that's when I set my trap. One evening, I invited her to an exclusive event, a high-profile networking night filled with millionaires, CEOs, and investors. She spent hours getting ready. When she walked into the venue, she looked stunning, just like the girl I had fallen in love with years ago. But there was a difference now. I wasn't the same man anymore. I greeted her with my signature smirk and handed her a glass of champagne. Enjoy yourself tonight. This is a world you once thought I'd never belonged to. She laughed, but I saw the nervous flicker in her eyes. She knew I hadn't forgotten. She knew, deep down, that she had made a mistake. And tonight, she was going to realize just how big of a mistake that was. Halfway through the night, I introduced Sarah to a group of powerful investors. I watched as she turned on her charm, doing everything she could to impress them. Then, as if on cue, I excused myself and walked across the room to a stunning woman in a red dress. I had met her weeks ago, a brilliant entrepreneur, and we had hit it off instantly. She was everything Sarah wasn't, loyal, ambitious, genuine. Sarah's eyes followed me as I leaned in, whispered something into the woman's ear, and made her laugh. Then I saw it. The moment realization dawned on her face. Her smile faltered. Her posture stiffened. She finally understood. She wasn't special anymore. She was replaceable. She had given up a man who would have given her the world. And now, that world belonged to someone else. As the night wrapped up, Sarah pulled me aside, her voice trembling. Can we talk? I took a sip of my drink, pretending to think about it. Sure. She hesitated, then blurted out, I made a mistake, okay? Leaving you. I see that now. I still have feelings for you. There it was. The confession I had been waiting for. I tilted my head, looking at her carefully. Sarah, let me ask you something. She nodded eagerly. Would you have still loved me if I was still that broke dreamer from 7 years ago? Silence. She opened her mouth, closed it. She had no answer, and that was all I needed. I chuckled softly, shook my head, and leaned in slightly, just enough to let her think, for a fleeting second, that I might forgive her. Then I whispered, too bad you made your choice. I stepped back, pulled my new girlfriend close, and walked away without looking back. Sarah stood there, alone, drowning in a wave of her own regret. And just like that, I got my closure. I never spoke to Sarah again. She tried texting me once more, but this time, I blocked her. Not out of anger, not out of hatred, but because I had truly moved on. Revenge wasn't about making her suffer. It was about making myself whole again. And in the end, the best revenge wasn't humiliating her. It was living a life so good, she could only watch from a distance and wish she had stayed.